Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be back for a more in-depth discussion with Rich Thanki, Managing Director, Head of Technology, and Founder at Jangala. I'm fortunate to be a trustee of Jangala. Welcome back, Rich. I'm delighted to welcome you back to the event.
Thank you, B. It's good to be here.
In 2015, Jangala set out on a mission to enable internet access for people in need of urgent humanitarian aid or long-term development assistance. However, as COVID-19 crisis hit in 2020, the world went online, and they realized that the digital divide between communities, cities, and entire nations had become more marginalized than ever before. I'm thrilled to be speaking to Rich today to hear about Jangala's journey from a crowdfunded project to now an established not-for-profit.
Yeah, thanks, B. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion with you.
So, Rich, tell us a little bit about, the beginning. Why did you establish Jangala?
So, B, I'd just like to maybe correct one thing that you said in your introduction, which is I think you said that in 2015 we set out on kind of a grand goal to enable internet access for people kind of worldwide. But in 2015, our goal was much more modest. Actually, it was much more immediate. The team that founded Jangala kind of came together as volunteers in the refugee camp in Calais, the Calais jungle, which was a camp of about 10,000 people in the north of France, people hoping to get to the UK to claim asylum. And the response, the public response anyway, to conditions in that camp was this kind of incredible effort involving volunteers from all over Europe, many from the UK, who saw the conditions that people were living in and wanted to just very immediately help these people who were, in fact, not half a world away, a few tens of miles from the south coast of England. And yeah, that's how I kind of got involved. A mutual friend of mine and one of my fellow co-founders, Nils O'Hara, remarked that Nils and his sister Jazz were having trouble connecting to the internet in the jungle, and that this was affecting their work, which was very much focused on distribution of essential items at that time, and the work of lots of the other organizations. Without internet access, people couldn't coordinate. Teams working there couldn't work, and also the people in the camp, were really affected by this. It was one of the most common requests saying, can I have some kind of Wi-Fi? Can you help me connect? I need to send a message. I need to look something up. I need to just alleviate some of the boredom that comes from, being in a cold, muddy, former asbestos dump on the edge of a major city. And yeah, to cut a kind of long story short, when I heard about this need, I kind of immediately put together a plan, because at the time I was working with Microsoft in sub-Saharan Africa on TV whitespace technology and how that was being used to connect communities all around, all over sub-Saharan Africa. But yeah, I had some skills, put together a plan, and within a few weeks we were connecting the Calais jungle using Wi-Fi, 4G, traffic shaping to make all of the system work. And those were the roots of Jangala, yeah.
It's fantastic. People really seeing a need and just putting all your resources and expertise to that. It's fantastic to see kind of this transition start from such modest roots, and well done. I think it's such a inspiring story for all. So tell me a little bit about sort of how did you transition from a crowd-funded project to now sort of the established not-for-profit you are? How long did that process take?
That's a really good question, and it happened almost seamlessly. So our work in Calais, we all kind of thought this was a one-off. This is it. We were all doing other things. As I said, I was working in Africa and also doing a PhD at the time as well. But as news spread, which the news does, especially when there's internet access, news spreads very quickly. We were inundated with requests from all over Europe and further afield for connectivity in a host of different situations, and we kept just getting emails. And that sparked a kind of twofold change in how we approach things. First of all, the approach that we'd taken, which was to kind of go and build very kind of traditional feeling networks, simply wasn't workable. It wasn't scalable. We needed to do something that would allow people to connect themselves. And that's how the idea of our first product, Big Box, was born. And secondly, we realized the scale of the need. And I think it was in 2016, that things started to become clear that actually this is a universal need. The context is the 65 million people who are displaced around the world, but also the many billions who are without access in important social settings, such as health and education. And it was really at the end of 2017 where, I think we took a decision as a team, and me personally, I thought, well, of the three things that I'm trying to juggle right now, which feels the most immediate, which feels the most pressing, which feels the most urgent in a time of crisis that we see now and crises in the future? Because I think that's what really kind of drove us as well, saying if the tools had existed when we were in Calais, then, that would have probably been it. I'd have actually probably finished my PhD. I'd have, been going down a very different path, but the tools didn't exist. And we wanted to make sure that when future crises strike, that the tools are available, to enable the very best instincts in people, which is to help, their friends and their neighbors and, strangers as well. And that instinct is kind of very wide ranging. And I think so in 2018, we decided to go full time with Jangala. We got some fantastic support from some very early believers. Our kind of chair of trustees, Kip Meek, who's like a well-established figure in the UK's like field of kind of politics and telecommunication, gave us great support. A number of different bodies kind of funded us in those early days, and we started the journey. Just the three of us initially, trying to kind of put together a way of working with these organizations around the world. And so that was the kind of start of it. It was a tricky process, and there were quite a lot of challenges along the way.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the challenges. It'd be great for our audience also to understand sort of what is the size of the team now and some of the operations. But it'd be fantastic if you can shed some light on what were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome from a company perspective, as well as the scenario you work in the field is already quite challenging. So I'm sure that presented some challenges too.
Yeah, I mean, everything is a challenge, and that's what makes everything about the job I'm lucky enough to have so much fun. I think so. At the moment, Jangala is a team of 7 full-time team members. We work with a number of other people who work with us as kind of part-time consultants, people who've been close to the project for a long time, and and when we scale, I'm sure a lot of those people kind of come, and be full-time members of the team. But I think one of the greatest challenges, and it's a challenge that I think we've only really in the past 2 years been able to get purchase on, is to actually be very kind of clear on the kind of scale of our ambition, actually, and the scale of the need. It's people are attracted to clear ideas and clear propositions, really. And I think for us, for Jangala, that important need for connectivity and making a meaningful impact in that connectivity divide is a really kind of has been a really important part of the story. And what that's done is that's attracted to us amazing people and organizations, and I kind of count and I count yourself amongst these people who've come and kind of lent their support to what we want to do. And so that's, from a kind of philosophical view, a clear challenge. And I think that it's very exciting that we've taken that on. And what that's done is that's helped shape our model. So at the beginning of next year, we're launching a trading subsidiary that will be fully owned by the charity. And what that will do is that will look to kind of commercialize some of these relationships that we have. So for big providers, who want connectivity as a service, we can serve them. Eventually we want to be able to be in a position whereby we can just simply provide our products and on a kind of normal sales basis. But at the same time, therefore developing a commercial entity that can focus its research efforts on the major problem at hand. So that's been a fantastic process of saying, well, what will our model be in the world? That we're a not-for-profit, but how do we fit in to the kind of commercial and not-for-profit world?
And within the field as well, you've been working obviously as the not-for-profit, but you have been supporting commercial organizations through the COVID crisis as well. So can you talk a little bit about some of those examples? How has Jangala, particularly the team, adapted over the last year to support your customers as well?
So I mean, again, that's been another prong of the transformation. Absolutely. So at the beginning of 2020, we had grand plans, and they were to really kind of focus on our big box, our first and only product at the time, to really kind of make that so that it could work for these big organizations, as you say, these kind of big multilateral NGOs and so on. But then, of course, COVID struck, and the best laid plans fall by the wayside. And so a lot of our deployments that were going to happen in places as far afield as kind of Sudan and Nepal were put on hold. And it was a kind of worrying time. But at that time, we decided, well, how can we use what we have, what we know, our skills, in the service of the community around us? I spoke to friends of mine who work as teachers in schools in London, or work with people at risk of homelessness in London as well. And they described, essentially a bomb that had gone off of a disconnection. The phrase is, my friend Emily had not heard from some of her students for, a substantial time. She had asked them, do they have internet access at home? And their response was, well, yeah, I do. But that involves using using a hotspot from one of my parents. So they thought that up to 25 or 25% of the students at school may have trouble with internet access. And with teaching having to move online so quickly, that was a huge problem. A lot of people who were being supported by organizations, who were at risk of, say, kind of homelessness or domestic abuse or a number of other issues, were finding that human time was lost. And people were becoming disconnected, that people, that the support networks weren't there. Then that was compounded by the fact that lots of places people had gone to use internet access, from cafes to libraries, were shut. And so we thought, well, okay, here is a kind of real problem. So what can we do about this? And so kind of very, very quickly, we put together a new product that we developed and built quickly. We used an existing commodity hardware platform. We took a lot of the software that was running on Big Box and ported it across as quickly as we could. And we created Getbox, which is a small, remotely controllable, very data efficient, very powerful, essentially 4G to Wi-Fi hotspot that can be used by organizations, deployed and scale, monitored remotely, kind of controlled with kind of time of day and kind of other settings that schools and other organizations need, and provide proactive monitoring and support as well, so that we can let organizations who are using that system know if someone is not connecting for a while, if there are issues, which is so important. And I think the last year and a half has been amazing for us because it's brought us much closer to home.
And the challenges you describe are ones that I think so many organizations face, but there's a great story, and I hope people listening to this will find it very, very inspiring to see how you pivoted in the model as well as the product to bring something much faster, sort of accelerate that development so that you could actually help more customers, more scenarios in which these can be used. And actually, as you said, you started with sort of 2020, you had grand plans, but I know for sure that the pivot has also meant that you have grander plans. So, I know that fantastic things have been happening, and I just want to congratulate you and all the team for winning the Digital Inclusivity Prize at the Cisco Global Problem Solvers Challenge. I mean, that just goes to show that this pivot has been so well recognized, and I think it will probably help inspire more people to think about, well, how can we turn the challenges we see, especially through the pandemic, turn that into opportunities that can really serve the communities and the world we live in. So tell me a little bit about kind of how are you going to be using this prize money from the Cisco Global Problem Solvers Challenge?
Well, thanks, Pete. I mean, it was great to win that prize, but I think that there's definitely a feeling within the team that we are certainly overworked, but I think we're overappreciated too. I mean, I think there's a lot we want to achieve, and while prizes are kind of great in terms of what we've done so far is a fraction of what we want to do, but it's a great vote of confidence. And I mean, again, the money is one part of it, and I think what it will really do is it will really accelerate some of the work that we want to do around putting partners in control of our product. So developing kind of telemetry and control, thinking a bit more about kind of UX, which is how do we make these devices kind of usable by anyone and controllable by anyone, is really important. But there's another aspect to the prize as well, which is I think equally important, which is there's a commitment by Cisco, especially with the winner of this prize, to provide technical help, engineering overviews, like detailed and commitments to technical mentoring. And again, that just is similar across the field. I mean, and it would be remiss of me not to mention ARM in this context as well. I mean, ARM has approached our relationship in a very kind of similar way, providing material support so that we can get devices into the field, but also providing guarantees of kind of time and expertise of ARM employees. And I think what this kind of reflects is something that I think reflects really well on our industry, which is that there is an idealism, I think, at the core of what we do as technologists. I mean, technology as something which used in human ingenuity to save human labor in time immemorial is still kind of pretty much that. Although we struggle now about kind of ownership and implications, I think there is a kind of like a childlike idealism really that infuses what we do, and it's great with the model that we've adopted, which is as a not-for-profit, with a strong commercial model that we hope can become a feedback loop and allow us to really innovate in the areas that matter. The offers of help and the assistance we've received is nothing short of exceptional. And I think what does this do? How would how does this apply to other people? Finding the right model that puts as little barriers in the way of what you want to achieve, and that might involve unconventional kind of organizational structures away from kind of the simpler models of the past. Can just unlock things in a way that's kind of remarkable.
Absolutely, and it's about this ecosystem, the partnership model that you've also set in place that is very much paying great dividends. And I think I fully relate to that idealism that you talk about. But I think that is something that makes technology really a special sector to be operating in. Great ideas will receive great support from the industry in more ways than a startup can imagine when they're setting out. And I think that is something that we should cherish as an industry and keep progressing on. So you started a little bit with that advice on how does this apply to other startups, but I do want you to kind of reflect on yourself as that sort of founder with an idea back a few years ago, and now someone who has gone through the journey of pivoting, of hiring people, of getting the support and raising awareness, that creating that clarity of proposition. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to follow a similar journey to yours?
Listen to what B. Hayes the Core just said in that question. When the team that founded Jangala, so it's myself, Noel Zohara and Samson Rinaldi, when we kind of, the three of us were kind of sitting there saying, well, do we want to turn this into something that we want to actually give up our day jobs for, to actually devote ourselves to this project? I think the thing that helped us do that was by thinking, how could we make the thing that we're building as generalizable as possible, really? How do we, so I think it was Arthur C. Clarke that said that there's there's failures in science fiction writing, there's failures of imagination and failures of bravery. And a failure of imagination can be excused. You may just not come up with something, but a failure of bravery, you might have had different words for that, is where you don't follow through the implications of what you have in front of you. And I think that's, in a sense, it was easy for us. The world telegraphed to us, actually, we got emails from the world saying they want to be connected in their situations. But for other people out there who have come up with an interesting solution to a problem that they know and that they've experienced, I think knowing and experiencing a problem is really, really important. We've all spent lots of time in the field as an organization, and one of our challenges is, we want all members of our organization to have that ability to be kind of on the ground where things are being used. That's important. Once you've immersed yourself in something and you found something that could be a solution to a particular problem, whatever that may be, whether that problem's in the data center or in the refugee camp, follow through its full implications, be imaginative about how it can be applied, abstract and step back and then reapply. And I think that through that process, you can come up with, answers that are just delightful. And if they're delightful, then I think, they may be widely applicable.
Fantastic. That is a super advice. I think, being able to immerse yourself into the problem, truly understand the size, scale, scope of change within the problem you're solving, and then the gift of perspective to look at it a different way and go with it, go at solving it with pace and rigor. That's the sort of fire and passion of most startups. But I think you summed it up so perfectly, and the work you do, provides such a great illustration for it as well, because it's so needed. It's a great application for technology and how we can really affect a better world in the future. So my last question would be, just what's your top tip for someone who is starting out today in this post-pandemic world to help them succeed?
Start conversations with people, stay engaged with people, be very kind of free with how you interact with people, who you interact with, and it's an adjunct to the last, but immersion and gathering. There are so many people out there that have helped us on our journey, and they've been kind of involved in kind of similar things themselves. So we've kind of actually brought together a lot of people who've actually had kind of similar kind of ideas and similar impulses. So yeah, that's what my advice would be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Rich. Thank you so much for sharing your deep insights and this journey. I hope the session has been really not only enjoyable, but also inspirational to many who will take a leaf out of your book and go ahead and give flight to their ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, B.